Sunday night, K Road.
Sunday, bloody Sunday.
And here we are on Poetry Night. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, or Poetry Club.
Yeah.
My name's Dr. Paragamatul Tahua O'Leary. Tahua to my friends.
Tahua.
Tahua, yeah.
Am I saying that right? Tahua.
Yeah. Yes, you are saying that right,
Cool.
Six.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Iwi?
Ngā Pui Ngā Te Hine, from just outside of Whangarei and up the Kaipara Harbour.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice part of the country.
Yeah, it is.
So, before we jump down that whole poetry rabbit hole, you've got a PhD in philosophy.
That's right.
And what was your thesis?
My thesis was on rehabilitating objective rationalist ethics.
Objective, rationalized ethics.
Rational ethics. So the idea behind that is actually quite simple. The idea is that there's one right thing for everybody in their circumstance, and it's the same and it's true for everyone who's in that sort of circumstance. And the guy who wrote the book that I wrote about relied essentially on something called idealization. And I thought that was a bit tutu, a little bit not right. And so I rehabilitated it by building in an evolutionary component and a communitarian component. And so argued that objective ethics is effectively what makes human lives go better when they're in the circumstance of being hunter-gatherers or communitarian type living spaces, and that post-agricultural life spaces are actually, we're not adapted to them, and so we don't do as well in them. Yeah. And I diagnosed the reason why people think that there aren't objective ethics down to the dynamics of politics and economics and the agricultural society.
Wow.
But when you get into a hunter-gatherer or a communitarian society, the norms are relatively simple. And they're also consistent across many cultures. And so that's what my thesis was about.
Kind of like there's always an objectively ethical thing right to do?
Yes, there's always an objectively ethical or right thing to do.
Here's an ethical question for you. Recently, we did an interview on the Chronicle, which we're yet to release, and still kind of debating if or not we will release it. But the guy came, can't say too much, but the person came on to the show and they were just too cool for school. You know, they're like monosyllabic. It was like they were sabotaging the interview for their own personal amusement. And honestly, it's a really cringe-worthy interview, but
I think that's subjective, though. I don't know if they were feeling that.
Well, yeah, I guess it is subjective.
The point is that after they recorded the podcast, they were like, this is the ethical question, right?
Yeah.
They were like, please don't release that, actually. And we're like, but we already took the time to meet you and record it.
We've spent a lot of time and effort going to recording that. And I don't think from a legal point of view we have any problem publishing it.
From a legal point of view, you have no trouble whatsoever.
Yeah, but from an ethical point of view...
From an ethical point of view, it can be a little bit more tricky, but there's implicit consent in coming on to the interview.
Exactly.
And the important feature you've already pointed out yourself, Six, which is that you devoted resources, time and effort to achieve a thing. Now, they might be dissatisfied with that thing, but it's not their call whether that thing is good enough for the show or not good enough for the show.
Yeah, it's funny.
Ethically, though.
Ethically, it isn't their call.
To me, though, I think I don't feel right releasing it if they don't want it out.
No, long story short, I think it's just it's too much time and trouble to worry about, and I think the risk of
repercussions
of pushback, I think, is higher than any gain that might be made from it. And I guess for us it's just a learning curve,
Yeah. And we've got better podcasts coming up, such as you. Tahua's come on here. They run the Poetry Club on K Road every week.
Every week, except when I'm depressed. Being bipolar, well, not schizophrenic, but bipolar, I get depressed quite regularly for long periods of time. But when I'm well, I run it every week. Yeah.
So is there a Facebook or somewhere where people can catch up on what's happening with that?
No, I am a little bit media non-savvy.
So it's kind of less, what's the term, laissez-faire?
Very laissez-faire.
So we just turn up on,
Sunday
nights.
And just turn up. Whoever wants to come, comes.
Word of mouth.
I tell people by word of mouth. People express interest, and some of them turn up.
I wrote a poem.
Yeah?
Once I thought that I was queen, but it was just a passing scene.
I like that. That's good. I like that. Yeah.
Do you find reading or writing poetry helps with depression?
I find writing it, for me, helps with my social alienation, which is not caused really by external things. It's more just that my disposition is such that I get very anxious all the time. So I pour a little bit of alcohol on it, calm it down, and then write. And mostly about the road, actually. I mean, like, all of my poems are located on, almost all of my poems are located on K Road.
Are you publishing them any?
Not at the moment, but I think I probably should.
I want some for the Chronicle.
I will give you some for the Chronicle, absolutely.
Hell yeah, we'll get the word out there. Because, I mean, to me, poetry is mostly self-indulgent nonsense. But, a lot of people like it. And, it's like, it's kind of like, a song without music.
It is kind of like a song without music. I once read an opinion that poets were wannabe musicians who didn't know how to play an instrument.
Do you play?
I can't play instrument. I used to be able to sing, but not anymore.
Just practice. I think it's like any instrument. You just got to practice.
Oh, yeah, and I was a drummer as well, if I'm honest.
No, any idiot can be a drummer.
Yeah.
Did you bring a poem to read for us?
Yes, I always carry quite a few of my poems on my phone.
All right, and while you're looking at their poem, I just want to give a shout out to your friend John, who's sitting quietly in the corner. He's come along to support it. We really are a Chronicle family, It's like we're drinking Coca-Cola now, but come later on, baby, we're going to be partying up. We're nearly at 1,500 downloads for the K-Road Chronicle podcast, so share it with your friends, get it out there.
This is one of my poems to Sake. It's called Poetry, question mark. Sake and the broken-nosed, broken-headed drunk, buying him booze for love, and my sake cools as he threads away angry for the beating he got for street arting. I sit, I sip, I savour the alcohol and suffering. Sake, momentary friend.
Nice. I like the momentary friend at the end.
Yeah.
So, like, the majority of your poems are about K Road because you're writing them
on K Road.
Right.
Yeah, no. So I write about the people I see and the things I see happen.
That's a good way to get you out of the house. Then I got to go to K Road to write some poetry. And K Road is famous for people watching.
Yeah, no.
One banks for a good poem.
One, it's got to be, I think, real. There's a lot of poems, a lot of poetry written where people are kind of preaching at you, and it's not fun.
Right.
A good poem either evokes like magic a mood, or tells a little story, but it tries to reach people.
And even though we kind of said it's a song without music, but there is a tombo, there is a rhythm.
Yes.
To a good poem.
Yeah. I tend to favour a little bit of breaks in the rhythm myself, just because that's my taste. But yeah, poetry has to have rhythm, flavour in the words, and if you're really good at it, you need to be disciplined. and
Is
work
there
on
money
it.
in it?
God, no. Not a dime.
No.
Not a dime. My father was a poet
Yeah.
and reasonably accomplished, and he didn't make a dime out of it.
So what is it that makes somebody a poet?
I think, in my case at least, it's just the inclination to communicate a moment. My favourite poet is Hone Tūwhare, and all of his poems communicate these wonderful moments. And my second favourite poet is James K. Baxter, and The Māori
Kiwi.
Jesus is one of my favourite poems. And that just captured elements of our country at that time, beautiful and ugly, sad and profound, even if it was through the lens of religion, which was Baxter's big gig.
Maori Jesus.
Yeah.
How long is that one? Could you read that?
That's huge.
Oh, it's huge. Okay.
On my
don't
phone.
worry. Did you know the poet who was on K Road for quite a long time? Haven't seen him for years. His name is David. No.
Oh, Dave Merritt.
Dave Merritt. Yeah.
Not by name, I don't know him, no.
He was
I don't-
great.
I don't know. I think I'm not sure what happened to Dave, but I think he retired to Northland or something. Apparently, he was quite a big deal at AUT at some point in his career.
He's great though. He used to sit on K Road quite
Yeah.
regularly and have a suitcase full of his poems that were kind of folded into their own little book that you would open up. And he just took koha, and they were great. Yeah.
Yeah, good old Dave.
Yes, no, I should do something like that at some point. I tend to treat poetry writing like photograph taking. So when I write a poem about people, I then feel obliged to show it to them and ask them if I can keep it. And if not, then I destroy it.
Cool.
Do you do photography?
No, I don't.
Are we
Yeah.
hearing some background singing?
Yeah. That's the food court.
Yeah, we film here predominantly on Sundays in the Lim Chaw food court. Where
Film
I'm
here. Record. Yeah.
very record. It's great, you know. I've got some great sponsors, but you know we always need more. So you know, look, we've got a couple of thousand subscribers. If everybody gave us just a couple of dollars a month, we could save the world. We could put shoes on every school and fill bellies, and honestly, it'd be amazing what we can do. And we could support the poetry and the arts.
Yes, I do think the arts are something that we neglect in New Zealand. I doubt that I'm good enough to count as a poet myself.
That sounds like a really poet thing to say.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It's like, don't you think that's kind of the hallmark of a good artist, is that self-doubt? That self-doubt that pushes you to do better and better and better.
Well, it's certainly the hallmark of somebody who ends up putting work into things. I agree. The main reason I haven't put a book together is because I think, who would want to read it? Who would want to read it?
Probably people on K Road. If it's about people on K Road, I think you've found your market. You know.
Look, I think, I mean, any artistic endeavour is kind of a reflection of society. So, like when I started the K-Road Chronicle, I said, well, it's got to be supported by the community. And if the community, which they seem to be, support what you're doing,
Yeah.
then that means you're providing something of value to them. So don't underestimate, you know, the people that come to your poetry nights, and don't underestimate the value of sharing your story with us on the podcast.
I won't.
And you know, I mean, I love doctorates. Honestly, they're rock stars to me. PhD. Where did you graduate from?
I graduated from Auckland University, 2009, something like that. Maybe a bit later. It's all a bit foggy for me.
Yeah.
I had heart failure at the time.
Oh no.
But I couldn't delay anymore, so I dragged myself exhausted through the halls of academe writing my PhD.
Wow.
It took me 3 months to write and 20 years to think about. Yeah.
So you became a doctor while you needed a doctor.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I walk the halls like a ghost of Christmas past.
So if you did release a book of all your poetry, did you think of a title for it?
Poetry, question mark.
Okay.
Stories from K Road.
Mm.
That's what I would call it.
How would you describe your work?
I try to evoke moods and feelings. You know how it is when you look at a scene or a bunch of people and they can transform from sinners to saints to angels to devils to ordinary people, all in momentary flashes? That's the kind of phenomena that I like to write about when I'm feeling that myself. I notice things, they strike me, and I try to capture what I've been struck with. So, for example, Wine Cellar's got a smoker's area. There's a brick wall that's just all black, but it's a textured black on black with sort of red brick fringes here and there, and I call it a pauper's Rothko, because it is. It has some of the brilliance of Rothko to it, and it's for poor slobs like me. Yeah. And that's the sort of thing I like to try and capture in poetry.
Are you doing teaching or lecturing?
Not now, but I am actually touting myself around trying to get a critical tikanga course going.
Right.
Where I get an expert in Māori tikanga and a bunch of students who want to learn about tikanga, and they get taught about it. And then we add Western philosophical questioning techniques and argumentation techniques and try to ask and answer various questions. Like, for example, what's so unique about being Māori after all? What do we value, and is it really valuable? Should other people value the same things or not? Are we from the past, the present, or the future? And if we're future-oriented, what does that look like?
Cool questions.
Yeah, I think that young people today are ready to question their culture in a way that people generations ago and even my generation weren't ready to do.
Well, today it wasn't even recognised as an official language till 1987.
Yeah, in my lifetime. Yeah. So I love to teach. It's my favourite occupation, actually.
And when did you start coming to K Road?
I started coming like really regularly about 5 or 6 years ago, and then I started coming every week. And it's, to be honest, the only part of Auckland I feel comfortable in.
You got a community here?
Well, I recognise the community here. Yeah, and I mean, they recognise me. So,
where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Onehunga.
Academic family?
My parents were actually academic. They both went to university, but he was a fitter and turner,
right,
and a unionist,
right,
and my mother was, not to put it too bluntly, a sociopathic, violent, horrible person.
Sorry, Mum.
Yeah, sorry, Mum. Thankfully, gone to her great reward beyond.
Cool. We no longer have to worry about being sued.
All right, she's not going to listen to this.
Yeah. No, I thought I'd clarify that.
Thank you.
So I had an interesting childhood.
That's funny. You're talking about being sued, Six, because actually the first time I contacted you, I saw the K Road Chronicle thing. I got a copy, and it was great. And then I had this poem that I sent to you, and then I met you later, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't want to get done for libel, so
oh my God,
I didn't print that."
Yeah. Well, it's basically just a list of people you hated.
Well, I wouldn't say hate, but it was like cool people I'll never see again, and some of them I would like to see again because they're dead. I miss them, and others was like, I'm kind of glad I'm not going to see that person.
Yeah,
again.
I'm kind of glad we didn't publish that film.
Yeah.
Was it a big family?
6
siblings.
6 kids. Yeah.
So where do you rank in the siblings?
I'm the oldest.
The eldest.
Yeah.
Do you think they gave you special privileges?
They gave me special responsibilities. So I learned to cook at a very early age.
Yep.
I looked after babies at an early age.
Right.
I was in charge of managing the hoard. I did an appalling job of it.
How old were you then?
10, younger even. Yeah. But Irish Catholic. My father was Irish Catholic.
Right.
Irish Catholic communist.
Right.
And he sent me to Catholic schools my whole life, my whole, schooling life. And I asked him one day, why did he send us off to these Catholic schools, given that he's a communist and an atheist, for God's sake? And he said, I thought it would it would give you immunity.
Oh, God, right. Yeah, you're like spy within or something.
I was an unreconstructed animist as a child. And
What does that mean?
I believe that everything was moved by its own internal spirit, or anima, or
Right,
animals. Yeah. And then I was an altar boy, and that was fun.
Yeah, I did that too. Yeah. Got to wear a dress for the first time.
Then at the age of 10, I was praying in a church for the well-being of a friend of mine, and just looked up and realised I was in a really big room by myself, and that was pretty much the end of it for me.
Just you,
Nobody else.
no God or Jesus,
Nothing.
no
Just
spirit in you. Yeah. Oh, the anima thing, right? You didn't believe everything had its own.
Well, that took a lot longer to fade away.
Oh, okay.
That took a lot longer to fade
Are
away.
your siblings academic?
No, they're all drug addicts and alcoholics.
So pretty much pseudo-academics.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, totally. And they've taken on the family habit of breeding, which I haven't done.
You haven't done as much.
As much, yes. I have one child, but only the one. But 3 of my siblings have between them 14 children.
Why do you think might have to cut this out.
But anyway, ask it anyway, because I'm open to any question.
Why do you think Māori have such an aversion to contraception?
I think part of it is the influenza plague. So even though nobody remembers it now, there was a time where we were going to die out. We were really going to die out. Everyone thought we'd had it because we were dropping like flies to influenza.
Spanish flu of 1914.
Yeah, and up north, our elders worked out that Europeans had immunity. So they started insisting that their wahine married Paka people and had as many children as they could. And I think that habit, that self-conscious decision to promote survival has just carried on with inertia. And now I think it's more inertial than any practical reason. But I also think that it's a vice of the poor. It's a vice of the poor.
Or an insurance sometimes.
Well, your wealth is your children. You know, the only wealth you can have is your children. Also, you can't guarantee any one or two of them will survive all the way to adulthood. So, yeah.
It's almost like breeding lottery tickets.
Yes, it's almost like breeding lottery tickets. That's quite insightful, Six.
It's a poem.
Yeah.
Have you got another one to share with us?
I do, actually. Here we go. Poetry. Tarot in the way they walk and move, an elegant flip of the hand, a brutal force in a swift shove, kings, queens, swords, cups charged to Bacchus, softened guts, smooth creases, a tone of some ill wind, floodlit dark, oddly insignificant, oddly pregnant. How do they fall? How do they stack? What pillory? What rack? And the street ghouls pace forwards and back, sorrowful shark eyes, and a decrepit Trojan helm head face glares, and the street sings its beautiful, broken, tuneless song, dark lullaby.
Nice. Nailed the ending. What do you want to tell people who are thinking about maybe coming down and checking out the Poetry Club on Sunday?
Come down on Sunday between around 7 o'clock at night, every Sunday. We're either at Verona or Archos.
Archos are a sponsor. The other aforementioned establishment is not?
So look for us at either place. They're within easy walking distance of each other. Will likely be actually... I mean, the main reason I used to go to Verona, and I'm using the past tense now quite deliberately, was because I knew the staff. But I might set up at Archos.
Do you have to bring anything to the club?
No, you don't. You don't. You
Bring an attitude.
Bring an attitude. That's it. Just an attitude. Just an interest. You can listen. That's always valuable. It's always appreciated. You can criticize. That's always valuable. That's always appreciated. If you want to bring something to read that's your own work, that's brilliant. If you want to bring something that you think is really worth reading that someone else wrote, do that too. And we extend into helping people write stories, literature, novels.
Workshopping.
Workshopping.
Great.
So whatever you're actually working on, we're interested in.
That's cool, and we'll try and support this initiative with some publicity in the Cairo Chronicle. We'll put some links in there. Look, really interesting. Personally, I find poetry boring as mud, but you've injected life into it for me today. I enjoyed the readings. Final words, Dan?
Let's go to Poetry Club. It's 5 to 7.
All right.
Let's go do it. Thanks for coming, Tahua.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, babe. That was awesome.
Cool.